Anna and Sproglet have both woken up ill this morning, which confirms potentially one of two theories. Either I was right about that big wheel yesterday and it is dangerous and they've both caught a cold off of it, or you get some kind of medicinal protection from visiting comic book stores, because of all the stuff we did together yesterday, there was just that one period of 10-15 minutes where we weren't all together as well. They were on the big wheel, I was in the comic book shop, they're both ill, I'm not. It can't be a coincidence, surely. A couple of months ago, wow, the blog has been going several months now. I can say things like a couple of months ago on this channel, but a couple of months ago, one of the very first videos I put on the channel, probably only a couple of weeks into doing the vlog, it was originally supposed to be titled A Brief History of Kev. It ended up being called Quitting My Job With No Plan. It's one of the most viewed videos on the channel, and it basically told the story of professionally how I got to where I am now. So my history of jobs, university, all that stuff. But what it kind of left out, or certainly didn't go into in any kind of detail, is my history online. And the combination of that and a few questions people have been asking me over the last few weeks about how the channels have grown as quickly as they have, and also writing this book that I'm writing, has got me thinking about the process that I've gone through to get to the point where across the two channels there's 13,000 subscribers now. I know most of the people on this one probably also subscribe to the other one, so it's nearer that 11,000, and I know in the grand scheme of things on YouTube that's still a minuscule number, but it's not bad for doing it for just over a year. But when you really examine Kev's online history, I've not been doing it for just a year at all. There's the secret hidden past that traces all the way back nearly 7 years. It's these 7-year cycles again. We talked about 7-year cycles the last time. I did a history of me and how my life goes in these 7-year cycles. And yet again, we're thumping ourselves up against another 7-year cycle, because purely by coincidence, my leaving date at work, so the day I start doing this stuff full time, is within sort of 6 weeks of the 7-year anniversary of me posting my first piece of content that I created myself onto the internet. It's weird how these things work out. So we have the 7 years of learning how to do it, and then hopefully 7 years of incredible runaway success. That's the plan anyway. So I thought today, as I'm trapped in here because they've got the lurg in there and I don't want to risk getting it, I thought I'd talk you through that 7-year learning process, just in case there is anyone watching who thinks that this has been one of those overnight successes that people talk about. Yeah, it's one of those other types of overnight success where there's a whole load of time before anyone even realises you exist. So we can trace my online life, and some of you will know this because I know for a fact there are a few of you who are still around from back in the olden days and will have watched the first video around about the time it first came out. But that might be an interesting thing for some of you. I said video, and tracing back through the archives, the first piece of content that I released onto the internet that I created, for the first 5 years of this, it was all stuff me and Sheepdog had created together. But the first thing we put out was a video. It was part of the Best Thing From podcast, which was the original thing that we did. There's the full story of how that podcast came to be in the book, which you can get on Amazon. I'll tell that story another day. You don't actually have to go and buy that book. It's not great. But we started a podcast, or we planned to start a podcast, that involved us travelling around to different parts of the UK and finding out what the best thing from those places was. And we went out on our first trip. We were looking for the best thing from Lincolnshire, because that's where we were. The first trip we went on was to Boston. We did do a podcast episode that week, the best thing from Boston. But before we released the podcast episode later in the week, we released 3 videos that we recorded on location in Boston. Here's a clip of one of them now. Well, I don't know how much of this is actually getting my face. I'm up here by myself, which I'll let Steve explain to you at some point. But I'm at the top of the stump in Boston. And yes, I was wearing a shirt. It was undone, and I had a coat over it. And yeah, you see, you think I'm a fat man now. The beard hides some of the fatness, and I have to say, prefer these glasses to the old ones. I know the sound quality and the video quality is awful. I was at the top of the stump holding a mobile phone out in front of me. That video was released in November 2010, and it was the first thing I ever put out on the internet. So really, if you're going to trace things back to their original origin, it's taken me 7 years to get to the point where I've got 1 million views and 10,000 plus subscribers. I won't necessarily include that story in the book. But that podcast stuck around for a year or so. It was fairly sporadic. We weren't very good at what we did. We were still learning as we went along. The sound quality was shocking. We were skint. We were students at the time. We couldn't afford to go out on the trips, and eventually they became less and less frequent. We somehow managed to justify travelling to Belgium to do the best thing from Europe and then never recording a podcast about it, and it kind of died from there. I don't have any of the original podcasts. I know they exist out there on the internet somewhere, but I couldn't find them. So unfortunately, I don't have a clip, but just rest assured the sound quality is awful. January 2012, though, was when the first of the successes started, because that was when we launched the Mature Gamer podcast, which has just celebrated its 250th weekly episode. We are just putting it on a 3-week hiatus at the moment. It's the longest break we've had in the 5 years that we've been doing it. We've been putting out weekly content, often sort of 1, 2, 3 hours long, every single week since January 2012. We can have 3 weeks off, and I promise you we will be back. But that started in January 2012. I have a clip of the first show. It's a bit, again, sound quality is a bit iffy. We sound a little bit wooden. We had a year's practice. We'd done like 50 episodes of Best Thing From at this point. We were still beginners, though.
Hello and welcome to the Mature Gamer podcast, the home of the older, wiser gamer. I'm Kev.
And I'm Steve.
It got better from there, I promise you. And it got so good that 2013 was a crazy, crazy year. So at this point, we'd been going like 2.5 years. We decided to bring back Best Thing From because we really enjoyed the freedom of not being stuck to talk about video games. We still talk about video games every single week on MGP, as it's now known. But it's nice to be able to talk about some off-topic stuff as well, and that's what Best Thing From became. We abandoned the idea of travelling around the country because by this point we both had grown-up jobs. We couldn't find the time or the money to be able to do it anymore. So we relaunched Season 2 of Best Thing From, and it was just a random topic selection each week. If you've ever heard the Complete Guide to Everything podcast, which is one of my favourite podcasts, it was basically a total rip-off of that. We picked a topic each week and we talked about it for an hour or so. And, well, we talked about it for 20 minutes or so, and the other 40 minutes was fairly random. I think the first episode was crisps, just to give you an idea of the kind of content that was on there. But really enjoyed doing it. It managed to run for a year or so, probably more than a year that time. We released 4 books off the back of it as well, because what we did is every weekly topic that we did, we also made it into a chapter of a book, and as soon as we got enough to fill a book, we released a book, and that was our first ever experience with releasing a book. And again, those books are terrible. They've never been edited. They were written as conversations between the two of us. They read like transcribed versions of the podcast, which they're not. It's done originally, and in some cases done 6 months or a year after the original podcast recording, and we didn't listen back to it to check. But the books exist. They're no longer available, I don't think. I'd have to check, actually. I should probably take them off sale. Got to maintain the reputation and all that stuff. But also that year, we did our first live show, meet-up as part of Mature Gamer Podcast in Peterborough. 50 or so people came along, watched us do a live show. We gave away a whole load of stuff. We've given away like £5,000 worth of stuff through these live shows over the 4 years that we've been doing them. It is crazy. And 2013 just was a crazy year, and it ended with us doing a 24-hour live show to celebrate our 100th episode, and we got some awesome guests on there. We interviewed Peter Molyneux, which if you're a gaming person you know who Peter Molyneux is. He's the guy behind Theme Park as well, maybe. Populous, I think, was another one. There's loads of games that he was involved in. Most recently he did the tapping the box thing to make the box open, and Goddess, the game that completely flopped. But he was promoting that at the time. He came on, and also Tom off Complete Guide to Everything, which we mentioned before. He came on that show as well. It was all very cool. Lots of fun. At the end of 2013, we thought we were ready to take over the world because everything was coming up Kev and Steve. We were riding the crest of a wave. Everything was brilliant. And then we took our eye off the ball a little bit, and anyone who was with us through that point, MGP never really recovered from the events of 2014. 2014 is when we discovered writing. We released the first Best Thing From book in April 2014. By the end of 2014, we'd released 4 volumes of Best Thing From and 2 fiction books, weekly serialised fiction. One of them was a semi-autobiographical comedy of our story when we were at university. We originally wanted to write it as a sitcom for TV. Didn't know how to write a sitcom for TV. Turns out we didn't know how to write a novel either. And again, released it without any editing. It still exists on my hard drive. It will get rewritten, re-edited and released properly at some point, along with Left Behind, which was our zombie comedy, which came out later that year as well. We released about 600,000 words of book over the course of 2014 and early 2015. It was our full-on focus. We were convinced this was our route into being able to do internet stuff full-time. And because of that, we took our eye off the ball with the podcast. The podcast became a live show for a little while, so we lost the ability to edit. The sound quality went downhill. We lost, I don't know if that's the year we lost one of our co-hosts. We just stopped focusing on it, and a big chunk of listeners departed at that point. We had a little mini podcast network that we'd been forming, and that kind of fell apart when we took our eye off the ball, and it all went a little bit wrong. Too many plates spinning. What does that sound like, Kev? Shut up. This is different now. I've learned my lessons, promise. So that was 2014, and then 2015 saw the beginning of me starting to branch out on my own. It's the year Kev started to go solo. I hadn't left the band. I still haven't left the band. We still do MGP every week. But I started to dabble in solo projects. Early that year, I released the Lazy Students Revision Guide. This book, buy it now on Amazon. It's the best thing I've ever written by a mile. If you've got exams coming up, buy that book. So I released that. That was something I did completely on my own, even to now. Probably even including the Football Manager YouTube channel. I think that's probably the most successful thing I've ever done. Certainly financially, by a long way. It's the most successful thing I've ever done online. And it's also the year where I launched the YouTube channel, right at the very end of it. Just completely on a whim. We'd sort of refocused on podcasting earlier in the year to tell you the story of where the YouTube channel came from. We got to, I think, April, May time, 2015. We'd kind of had our fill of writing books for a little while, but we did refocus back in on podcasting because we realised as much fun as the writing side of things had been, the most fun we ever had was when we were doing the Best Thing From podcast. That's why the book spun out of it. So we wanted to recapture that fun, but not just retread old ground. So we decided to go daily. We originally wanted to do a daily YouTube show, but we didn't have the kit, we didn't have the time, the production quality, the know-how to be able to do it on YouTube. But the seeds of YouTube in my head had started to be planted. We hadn't really touched YouTube since original Best Thing From, where we uploaded maybe half a dozen videos, and then that became just focusing on the podcast. We wanted to do something daily. We wanted to take iTunes by storm. So we released a new podcast, 10 minutes every day. We're from the internet. It should have been on YouTube. I wish if we ever go back to it, it will be a YouTube series. We could go back to it and do it as a YouTube series. We did 100 consecutive daily episodes starting from April 2015. During that time, we ended up in the top 100 on iTunes overall. We'd previously had number ones with MGP in the games and hobbies section, but we were flying high in the comedy chart, which is the hardest chart to break on iTunes, and the overall chart. We got interviewed and our picture in our local newspaper. Certainly, recognition-wise, that then became the most successful thing we'd ever done. We never made a penny from it, but people knew who we were very briefly for a short amount of time. But eventually the workload of creating daily content just got the better of us. We got to episode 100 in July of that year and decided to knock doing daily on the head. It became a weekly show, which kind of survived another 3 or 4 months. It was basically the same as Best Thing From had been, where we picked a topic each week, did an hour on it, put that out, and it became a little bit that whole retreading earlier ground thing that we didn't want to do, and it became something we didn't really enjoy. So that podcast got put to one side. There'd been another podcast in there somewhere as well called Kevin Steve's Indie Publishing Adventure, which was us talking about our writing, and that never got off the ground. I think we managed to do about 10 episodes over the course of about 6 months. I think it officially was still alive after the death of We're From the Internet, but not by a lot, and I haven't even written that one down on my notes that I made about this. It was so insignificant. But we'd started to accrue some failures at this point. It was no longer all coming up Kevin Steve. The books hadn't been as successful as we hoped they'd been. We'd taken our eye off the ball with the podcast, so that was starting to I mean, listeners were departing left, right and centre. It was mad. We did MGPX 3 or MGPX 2015 in Peterborough, and it was the lowest attended event we'd had so far. We still just about made money to cover our costs on it, but it wasn't how we wanted it to be. We felt restricted by the fact we were basically doing it in a pub back room, and we kind of decided there and then that we wouldn't ever do it as a pub back room thing again. If we were ever going to do another live show, it would be a proper event in a proper city, which it was the next year, which we'll get to. But yeah, October 2015, we'd accumulated this kind of run of, I don't know if failure is the right word, but stuff that just hadn't come out the way we hoped. We'd had that 2 or 3 years where everything was good, and then we had a couple of years realistically, and 5-6 consecutive projects that didn't really take off or didn't really go anywhere, or we lost interest in. And I just, on a whim, decided to upload a Football Manager video onto YouTube. I'd seen Dr. Benji do a video about a month before. I didn't know people played Football Manager on the internet at this point, but I saw his, I can never remember now whether it was his 1,000 Years in the Future one that he did, or the Girlfriend versus Football Manager series that he did. Either way, I watched them both, thought they were great, thought I could do this. Just uploaded something just to see what it was. Here's a clip. It was terrible. Hello and welcome to my first attempt at a YouTube Football Manager video. I'm Kev. If you're watching this, I guess you probably know who I am from the Mature Gamer podcast, or maybe as Lelujo on Twitter. But slowly but surely I realised how much I was enjoying it. People seemed keen on it. We got to 500 subscribers by December, which to me was mad, and eventually it started to get to the point where it wasn't absolutely terrible. I invested in some kit, bought a camera, bought a proper microphone, proper lighting, the green screen, and it became the full focus of my attention. I was absolutely loving doing YouTube. We hit 2,000 subscribers in April. By April, I was getting more views a day on YouTube than the podcast was getting in a month. It was mad. 3,000 subscribers by June. We hit June, July time. I launched this channel, the second channel. It was originally called Never Too Old. It was about my obsession with toys and comics and stuff like that. I uploaded close to daily on this channel for 6 or 8 weeks before it slowly sort of petered out as I realised I didn't have enough toys and comics and stuff to talk about. Went back to work, it kind of disappeared, only to resurface in January as this vlog channel. We did do one last MGPX in Nottingham last summer, and we set a new record for the lowest number of people who've attended. There was 20 or 30 people in the room. It was awfully poorly. Oh, it was just terribly attended. It was in a big city. It was a great event. It was lots of fun. It was the best show we've ever done. There's clips of it here.
It's the wrong jingle. Goodness sake. All this professionalism that we were going for this year, and some idiot put the wrong jingle on. Hello and welcome to MGPX 2016. I'm Kev, and with me this year we have Sheepdog, Anna and Pab. Say hello, boys and girls. Hello, everybody. Hello. Did we get a hello from the end there? I can't hear you.
We have a history of ongoing sound problems when we do MGPX. But when you're there, it works. But I think that's dead now. We won't do another one of those unless 500 people tell us they want us to do something this summer. It's at the very least taking a year off. 5,000 subscribers on the gaming channel in August. I tried doing FIFA back in October. We're not going to talk about that. November, I was even on the telly. A clip of me on the telly now.
I've also been asked, before I let you go, which is literally about 20 seconds time, when your next film is out. I've been told to ask you. There we go, just wondering when...
That TV show died about a week later, but still I was on the telly, and that's the important thing. And then, I mean, we're getting caught up with where we are now. So January we hit 10,000 subscribers. We'd cruised past 1 million views, started the daily vlog, which is where you are now, and we get to February and I've handed in my notice, and as of September, at the end of this 7-year cycle of life on the internet, this is going to be the thing I do full time. Looking at that now, goodness me, I'm crazy, because I've got more failures than successes there. And that's kind of what makes me so determined to succeed this time, because I'd like to think I've learnt from all the stuff that's gone wrong over those 7 years, and fingers crossed I'm not going to mess it up this time. I know that's been a long video, but you know, it does tell a long story, so I think that's allowed. Let me know down in the comments what you think of that. Here's a question. Which, if any of those things, would you like to see make a return? There's a lot of stuff there that's been put on holiday, put to one side, abandoned because it wasn't really working. What would you like to see return? Let me know about that down in the comments. And I've got the green screen. I have to do it. If you've enjoyed that, please make sure you pop a like on there for me. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more. And thank you very much for watching. And tomorrow will be a proper out and about vlog. I'm not going to make a habit of being in the garage with the green screen on this vlog channel. Remember, hiding from the infected people.